be conversational with your audience, be interactive, be yourself, like be authentic. I mean, you look at the top creators out there today, they're all exuding personality and energy, and you just like, people just want to be friends with them. You have to get people to spend time with you and spend as much time with you as possible. That is why I'm not a big fan of short form content. I'm a big fan of just holding off the full-time thing for as long as you can. If the momentum is there and the income is there and you've carved out how much you got to pay in taxes and all of that boring stuff, make sure there's a pretty clear foundation or in front of you.
What does it take to thrive in a creator economy that's constantly evolving? Matt Koval, a former YouTube creator turned executive and now founder of Creator Dynamics, has lived through every phase of YouTube's transformation. From those scrappy days in 2008 when he was creating comedy sketches to crafting YouTube's original playbook and even pioneering the Creator Liaison program, Matt has shaped the way creators and platforms connect. In this episode, we dive into the harsh truths about YouTube's creator lifecycle and how to outlast it. Why creators need to rethink fleeting fame and focus on building real businesses. The secret to balancing passion and sustainability in a momentum-driven world, and why the lean-back power of intentional long-form content is the key to creating connections couch to couch. Matt's insights are equal parts inspiration and reality check. If you've been chasing viral hits or running on that creator treadmill, it's time to slow down, rethink, and build something that's going to last. So grab your seat, preferably on that comfy couch of yours, and let's dive in. Brought to you by Gigastar. Inspired by YouTubers like you with the vision to fuel human creativity, Gigastar brings creators and investors together. The man, the myth, the legend, the man behind all of the other creator people on the internet. I am so excited to dive into all things with you. You ready, Matt?
I'm ready. Let's go.
I think it's important to have context because, well, I know who you are. I don't think not everyone does. So who are you and why are you here today to talk? And what are we talking about?
I'm Matt Koval. I was a really early creator on YouTube. I'm talking Hank Green era at the beginning, 2008 to 2012. I guess you could say I was a YouTube star back then, but views have just skyrocketed since for everybody else. Like back then, 100,000 subscribers was a lot. I made the very first course, I believe, on YouTube, how to grow on YouTube. And this was before Teachable or Kajabi and all that. And I'm 99% sure it was the very first course ever made about how to grow on YouTube. And a YouTube executive saw it and invited me into the company as an employee. So I made the very rare leap of going from being a creator, a comedy creator, by the way, wearing wigs, etc., to jumping into the inside of YouTube, where I thought I would last maybe 6 months as a corporate employee. It turns out I lasted 10 years in various roles around content strategy and creator education.
I think as the creator liaison, what you acted as one of those like first in not just YouTube's history, but like corporate history, having someone whose job it is like, it's my job to talk to our customers and our creators so that we can have that translator over like, what do we want versus what makes sense and back and forth and why things are happening. What are some of the really big things that you spearheaded or co-spearheaded with YouTube and creators while your time was at YouTube?
Well, I was there for a decade, and I would say 8 of the 10 years was around content strategy and working with creators and building out the best practices of how to build an audience on YouTube. And, I'm proud to say, like, I was a part of that original team led by Ben Rellis, where, we wrote the original playbook. And that was a physical book, if you remember. And then in the last 2 years, I helped create this role of creator liaison. And the way that came up was we had been talking about it for like years. And the communications team at YouTube and the PR team was like, we're getting so frustrated because creators keep assuming the worst whenever we make an announcement or make a change to the platform. And it like every announcement was bombing with creators, and there was like fury on Twitter. And so I was talking with the head of the communications and PR team over a couple of years, like we need some kind of role that is an in-between, a go-between. And I learned this term ombudsman, which I had never heard of before, but it's like some kind of journalist who is independent from the main company, who communicates to the users and customers. And so, but this was just like a back burner conversation for years. until this guy, Danny Sullivan, was hired over on the Google search side. And Danny was a liaison for Google search. And if anything, if there was any controversy or change around Google search, people could tweet at Danny and he would respond in a very human way. Like, yeah, we know, we're working on it right now. Don't worry. I'm jumping into a meeting with the product team right now. And so what happened was Sundar Pichai loves Danny. And he turned to Susan at the time and said, hey, can we get somebody like this for YouTube? Because this is working really well. It's communicating to our users and it's helping to humanize. And let's just like let people know there are humans working on problems, very hard problems over here. And Susan went to Chris, who's the guy I'd been talking to about this role. And Chris called me up one day and said, guess what? Sundar wants a liaison role now, and you're the guy, because we've been talking about this for years. So I never thought of myself as like a public facing communications ambassador type, but I was willing to try it out. And so we developed the role. And then as soon as it started, COVID happened. So that curtailed our plans a little bit, but I held the role for 2 years. And then I was very happy to hand it off to my friend, Renee Ritchie, who's doing amazing with it now.
Yeah, he's really leading the charge and really like advocating for creators in really strong ways in the same way that you did as well. Okay, so 10 years at YouTube, you probably have you've seen some pretty crazy things that have happened over the years. I would really love, I think, to break up like YouTube into like 3 parts. We have where we are right now. I feel like we had the COVID era. I feel like we then before that we had like our like being a YouTuber became like a legitimate thing that people aimed for and did. There was so much monetization changes that had in that time. What are some of the things from these different parts that are so different now? Like, let's talk about the before the different times. So I always feel like when I started on YouTube, and we talk with a lot of other people who have been on YouTube for a long time, that playbook doesn't work anymore. Like how a new creator comes in today, or even in the past like year or two, they can't do that same thing. But yet that's what everybody really wants to do. So let's talk about what that time was like and what was it that worked so well for people to build brands and businesses as YouTubers.
Well, I don't know that I'd agree it doesn't work anymore. I mean, some of the fundamentals of YouTube out of that playbook was like, be conversational with your audience, be interactive, be yourself, like be authentic. And you might say those are stereotypes now, but like that still works. That stuff is still, I mean, you look at the top creators out there today, and I've lost track of who's who at this point, but like they're all exuding personality and energy. And you just like, people just want to be friends with them. And so I think some of that still applies for sure.
I think it's less more about the content and more about the brand and business of it, right?
Yep.
Fun YouTuber is all about like how we making money as creators. I think how we build businesses as creators now is totally different.
Yeah. I mean, there is that. I mean, when I started on YouTube, there was no money involved really. And it was just like fun. It was a fun, creative venting. And now there's quite a bit of business behind it. And there are all these different ways to monetize it. You could look at it a few different ways. You could say it's a lot harder now because it's so competitive. You could look at it the other way and say, well, there are like 15 different ways to monetize a channel now, like 10 or so of them through the product. And then my favorite way is to have your own business where it's not a YouTube business. It's like you have a business, and then you utilize YouTube and you don't have to get a ton of views. And that becomes like your marketing funnel.
And that is my favorite thing too. That's what I do with my business and with the people that I work with customers. Like, you know, the plumber down the street needs business too, not just the really cool creative creator that can like make cool things and do cool shots and go on cool trips and all of that kind of like YouTube culture that we have developed and being able to do that. What do you think it is that creators need to do to build a business that isn't YouTube or content creation centric, but more supported by content creation?
If you split it out by entertainment and education, I mean, at the end of the day, I always like to say, you know, basically on YouTube, there are three categories. There's entertainment, there's education, and there's news. And then you might say, well, what about sports? I'd put that under entertainment. If you're an entertainment creator, then you're kind of stuck having to build your YouTube business where it's all about you. You're the product. I mean, by the way, that was the channel I ran. I had a comedy channel and I was trying to sell t-shirts. This was before even Patreon and all that. But you're kind of the product and you got to keep that product going and stay in front of the camera. It's exhausting over the course of the 40 years you need to run your career. If you have an education channel, that's easier. Like the value is not placed on you personally. It's what you're teaching. And then of course you can have courses and products and memberships as well as what an entertainment creator can have. But I just feel like the opportunities are greater with an education channel or an information-based channel. And as far as what an entertainment channel can do, I mean, your options are limited and it's a tougher road, basically. And fame is fleeting. And so it's kind of like when I left YouTube, I made this video on my channel about, the truth about the creator life cycle. And in my anecdotal view over the years, like the life cycle was about 5 to 7 years. And that was for a successful creator. So I think anybody getting into this business needs to just understand what they're up against and the timeline, like the realistic timeline of what's involved.
Yeah, that life cycle is no joke too. And you have to think about it from like a career perspective. Like when you do a job, like if you have like a corporate W-2 situation, doing something for 5 to 7 years nowadays is like crazy. Like usually people don't stay at companies for that long. If they do, there is this general like evolution of like what your job is, more responsibilities, doing all of this other stuff, obviously more income. And as a creator, you have to figure out like if I got in this way, how do I stay and grow as a person? I've always had this personal stance, and you're of course allowed to like disagree with me, that YouTube doesn't want you to change as a person. Like YouTube's like, okay, I figured out your box and I want you to stay in it. And we as people get bored with that. Because like we as people change and grow. Like who I was when I started on YouTube, like for me personally, it was because I needed leads to my agency, and I was like working in like a non-air conditioned room in South Korea while I had 2 little kids. Now I do my YouTube exists for the same thing, but what I talk about, how I talk about it, how I present it, what I'm doing with it is so totally different, but the purpose of the channel still exists. What are your thoughts on what creators can do to live beyond that 5 to 7 years in the creator life cycle, and how do they fight that YouTube desire to keep you the same?
Yeah, I think if you're taking the entertainment route, you have to look at traditional entertainment careers like being an actor or being a musician. And you have to realize, as we look at some of the bands we loved when we were teenagers, like they're pretty much long gone, except for Metallica, one of my favorites, and they're still going. So if you're on the entertainment track, and that's why I wanted to separate it out, you have to realize that fame is fleeting. People are probably going to grow out of you at some point. It's going to be personally very taxing for you to be the product and be on camera at all times. It is personally very taxing to show off your personal life, the ups and downs, to turn that into a show. I don't advise it. I don't recommend anybody doing that. And I used to love watching Shay Carl's Family and all that on YouTube. And now I think people are starting to realize the toll that it takes personally for people who turn their entire lives into a reality show. Mm-hmm. And so it's a tough road. You have to get enormous amount of views. You have to run on that treadmill to maintain relevance. And so you can pull people into memberships, you can get the ad revenue, you can sell merch, you can do brand deals, but you have to run on that treadmill. Like you got to be running. It really is a momentum career, especially on the entertainment side. On the education side, it is easier in my view. It's not based on your personality and your personal life so much, although your personality can really help. Like if you're engaging, if you're funny, that is just icing on the cake of your education business. And it's fantastic. But I think your longevity is a lot better because the value, again, is not based on you. It's based on what you're talking about. And so I love some of these creator businesses out there like Epic Gardening with Kevin Espiritu, and how he sells products, but he's also the main face of the channel. I worked with them recently, and I love what they're doing. Now they're starting to branch out to have guest stars or co-hosts on the channel. And so it's not all about Kevin so much. It's a huge business.
Yeah, I think was it Benjamin Babish does that. Think Media was doing that, like having other like guest hosts, essentially, kind of like the nightly news, like those anchors and stuff can switch out based on what people are doing, where they are in their career. It can allow for it to be a brand build, not an individual build. So yeah, one of the things that we had talked about a little offline when we're talking about the life cycle of the YouTuber is I think that I'd love to know what your advice is for YouTubers who are personality centric. What can they do? What can they do to prepare to avoid quitting? And how they can set themselves up beyond YouTube. And the example that I gave is like similar to how athletes have done it. Like an athlete is part of a team, but they are the star power, and like that's what people usually buy into with like different deals and things like that. What can YouTubers do to sustain if they are individually focused?
So they're on the entertainment track? Is that what you're saying?
I think if they're on the personality track, like their personality, their person, like it lives and breathes by them.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a really tough road. I think you have to be super consistent, but first of all, make sure that consistency works with your personal life and that you can find some balance. One of the things I was shocked by when I joined YouTube as an employee was how they didn't want me to work on weekends or nights. They brought me into the company, and I would start doing some work on a weekend, and I would email people, and my boss was like, "Yo, you can't email people on the weekend. Like, don't do that, because that adds pressure to everybody else to make them think they have to work on the weekend." And I was like, "What? Really? So I can just like enjoy my weekends?" And so my point is, I think like balance is absolutely crucial. If you're going into this world, you're gonna get on that treadmill as a personality, and you're gonna hopefully at least upload once a week. You got to be ready to run the marathon and run it sustainably. To make sure you got comfortable shoes, you're hydrated, you're dressed in the right way according to this metaphor, and you have a personal life that is like separate. So don't just like start recording everything and think that's going to be sustainable, because it won't be.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I've tried vlogging, and I don't know how those family vloggers do it. Like I'm parenting, trying to like work at the same time is like borderline impossible. I don't know how people do it, and you can definitely tell that like that's the job, and the family knows and the kids know, and it's really hard to have that balance of what it is. And it's a really important, I think, lesson in entrepreneurship. Like put the phone down. There's literally always more work. There's literally always something more that you can do. Just step away, like set that boundary for yourself so that you can have that mental clarity and balance. Okay, so let's talk about our new era of being a creator. I know that you have so many salty feelings about short form content and how you find it so unsustainable and so like fleeting, which I have a level of agreement with you. I feel like short form content is definitely more support, not main character energy in the way that YouTube is. But what do you think it takes for a creator to build a successful brand as we are diving into 2025 and are in this like new established era? Like we have the creator economy, the brands and the companies, like they understand ish to an extent what we're doing, why it's necessary, that they have to be there, all that stuff. And then we are products ourselves. We are the media companies. What do we do to build successful brands?
Desiree, I think it's very simple. You have to get people to spend time with you and spend as much time with you as possible. And so that is why I'm not a big fan of short form content. However, that said, I love it. I love TikTok, or I loved TikTok, if this is whatever happens to TikTok. But if you watch yourself consuming short form content, it is so dismissive and kind of like, you're just swipe, 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 swipe. Pay attention to the mindset that you're in, because in my view, you get a quick dopamine hit. You get some interesting piece, and then you watch like a car accident, and then a crazy funny thing, a prank. It's so fun, but it is like building a house of cards as far as a fan base. People rarely click into your page or your channel and go, well, who is this person? I'd love to know more about them. It's just a really hard way to build a business. It's a great way to attract attention and to like pull people into your world. And I've definitely been sucked into creator worlds where I saw somebody in a short or a TikTok, and then I was like, oh, I'd love to learn more about who is this person. They're really interesting. But I think more often than not, people don't do that. They just keep swiping. And so if you really want to build a business as a creator, and by the way, I'm old school. I'm Gen X. And I'm like, but in my view, you got to do it the old way, like Coke Classic, baby. You got to have long form, have people spend time with you. And that's why podcasts are so powerful as well, because people sit there and they just listen to your voice, Desiree, every week, hopefully, and they get to know you, and like you're slowly building up a business with this.
Well, and you also have the opportunity for like the slow touches of humanization as well. Like when you're talking long form with people, you can't help but I think bring in like your life examples and your life experiences into things to make your points or give examples or have those appropriate analogies and stuff. Like throughout this podcast, I have talked a great deal about like my family, my kids, my business, my income, my, some of the struggles and the obstacles that have come into place based on who I'm talking to because of those relatability points. And that is where people I think are able to build trust with me as the host and know that I'm bringing in more people that they're going to be interested in talking to and having those other opportunities to spend time with someone else that they might be able to relate to help with their problems. And so I couldn't agree with you more about long form content, which is why I'm really excited as we're entering into like this next phase in the creator economy. I'm really loving that we're getting back to like intentional time with people and slower content. Like we're not like flashing the Mr. Beastification of things. It's slower, it's more intentional, it's visual storytelling, it's spending time with people. And I think that YouTube is just primed for that. And I think my favorite thing that YouTube is really focusing on when it comes to helping creators spend time with their audiences is really encouraging people to create TV focused content. Like people are now, while they're on the phone, they're also using their TVs to watch YouTube. And people want YouTube's encouraging creators like create TV content that people can spend time with you in their living room, not just like on their computer or their phone. And I think that that is a great way when you think about the old school, the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s mentality of things is like the living room is where you spent time together. And like if we can, by having us on those TVs, we're able to spend time with people in the spaces and in the where they're already spending time with others. Why not spend time with you too?
Yeah, and I would just point out in the living room, you're leaned back on the couch. Whereas with short form, whether you're on the toilet or wherever you are, you're leaned forward and you're just like actively looking for the next thing. And so that's also where TV is just so powerful, or living room as they call it, is because people are traditionally kind of trained to lean back and take it in and be more receptive of the content.
But you have to think about it. Your phone is an on-the-go thing. I'm standing. I'm in my kitchen. I'm in line for coffee. I'm at a long stoplight, and I have to check my music. Like it's a vertical situation. Your living room has a couch in it, and your couch is like a deep sit, cozy situation. If like you're real lucky and like you've created that space for lounge and relaxation, so it's designed for relaxing and spending more time together. And I think that is crucial for it. My attachment to this question, though, from a business perspective, is okay. This all goes back to like the old school mentality that you said we have to spend time with our audience. And I don't think that ever went away. I just think that we forgot that YouTube is the place to do that first and foremost. I think the question I have is like, okay, if we're spending more time with our audiences and we're building like successful brand recognition and stuff. What does the next phase of monetization look like within that?
Yeah, I have strong feelings here. I mean, first of all, I'm somebody who and I love when creators have a job, and they have a steady job that they enjoy, and they do YouTube on the side, right?
Okay.
And I'm a big fan of just holding off the full-time thing for as long as you can. Like, try to make this sustainable as a part-time gig for a long time. But then at some point, you really need to, if the momentum is there and the income is there, and you've carved out how much you got to pay in taxes and all of that boring stuff, and you're ready to make the leap, you just want to make sure there's a pretty clear foundation or, in front of you that, when I left Google, for example, I went to a smaller startup. I went to a startup, which was Mighty Networks. And I went from a company that was 150,000 people in Google to 100 people in Mighty Networks. And I wanted to start consulting and stuff, but I was terrified of going off on my own. And so if you've got a great job and you want to be a full-time creator, I'm not a fan of just like going for it, just like quitting and going for it. I'm a fan of keeping that job going as long as you can. Try to make it sustainable. Try to make your format sustainable enough that it's not killing you to do it outside of your work hours, and slowly build your business from there. I believe I heard Graham Stephan talk about this. He was working as a real estate agent in LA, and he kept doing it, and his channel was huge, and he was making a ton of money from YouTube. But he kept going with his career until he was like very, very sure that there was something of a net on the other side when he made that leap. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, he pushed his channel into a huge business. But maybe I'm a little more on the conservative side and the safe side. But that's the way I like to roll, and that's the kind of advice I give.
I don't think that you're doing it from a conservative side. I think that you're coming with this from an adult perspective. And I know that sounds a little like mean, but one of the things that when I look at where the creator economy is, sorry, let me phrase it. When I look at how we have idolized things, let's just say I turned 40 this year, so the idolization of things over the last 30 years. It's always about whatever like is young and hip. It's never anyone over 30. Never. Right. And if you look at it, and this applies to so many things, music, entertainment, real world, whatever's like all of these things, like our movies or entertainment, it's always about like the young, I think, naive, stupid, like things that's easy to write about because we've all kind of been there, and there's lessons to learn and growth opportunities and all that kind of stuff in a really easy way. When you look at where the creator economy is, we look at all of our successful case studies of people that like we love and idolize. When they were hitting their peaks, they were in their 20s and in their growth and stupid. And so it becomes this idolized fantasy or goal, especially around like younger people who want to go do that. So when we look around events like VidCon and VidSummit, and you look at the people that are hungry to do it, they're all young, they're all single, they maybe have partners, but they definitely have a dog. Like there's just not that responsibility attached to it. I became a creator when I was 32 and I had 2 children and a husband in service. Like my reasons for becoming a creator were problem solving based, not dream based, or I want to be like this person based. And I think that is why these perspectives are really important. When you look to even back on the funded YouTuber guests, the vast majority of the people that have been on this podcast who have found way to be multi 6-figure creators, they're older, they're making more mature, responsible decisions, not emotional, whimsical, dream chasing or butterfly squirrel chasing decisions. They're being intentional with what they're building because they're putting their responsible hats on and their responsible eyes on to make those decisions.
Yeah. It's funny. You're entering your 40s. I'm pushing 50. And one thing that I went through in my 40s was like, oh my God, everybody's younger than me. Like it's a young
Oh my God,
world.
so much.
And it is. It is a young world. Just wait till you're pushing 50. Although I think you start to get over it at that point. It's a young world, and we don't want to kill anybody's dream. I mean, I went out, I studied film in college at Towson University near Baltimore, and then I drove out to LA and was like writing screenplays and working in production. And this was before YouTube. And then YouTube started, and I was doing comedy videos, and I was like, I just want people to see that I'm talented. You know, that's kind of what was motivating me. And I don't want to say to the kids now, you know, no, don't do that. Build a business, you know, get a job, be a lawyer, or anything like that. I want you to go out there and explore and find yourself and sow your oats and all those things.
Be
and
stupid.
If that means, yeah, I mean, try a couple crazy businesses out. I sure did. I'm not even going to get into the businesses that I tried to start, but have fun, find yourself. And if that means starting a few different YouTube channels and things like that, sure, great. But, you know, yeah, at the back of your mind, you do have to realize the clock is ticking. And at some point, you're going to have to get a little more serious about your income. I actually started YouTube at 32 also, and I was married and I owned a house, and the pressure was on already at that point to do something. I mean, I had family members saying, hey, Matt, have you ever thought about being a gym teacher? You know, not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know, I was horrified because I had this plan to be a director, like a writer director in show business, and so it was shocking to hear that from some of my family.
No, I hear you. I wanted to be an animator for Disney. I went to college to be an animator, all of those things. I graduated the recession, and it was like, figure it out, kid. And so I remember uploading my demo reel to YouTube. This was 2007, and it was foreign concept. Like I would send emails and like resumes, and they would message me back and they'd be like, can you send us a DVD, please? I remember I had to like manually like burn them on my computer and all that kind of stuff and put them in the mail. Like it was this whole different like process for things. And you have to have your young years to dream and idolize and be crazy. I tried really hard with my kids not to put my like mom eyes on and just like let them dream and be soccer players and singers and all the crazy stuff that they want to do, you know. And it's just my job to build, study in the background, and then when they're, you know, they need life advice, to be there for them. It's raise the kids you have, not the ones you want. And you know, but the struggle I think that we have is when they're young, they expect old people money, and I think like, like there's no other way to kind of like when you're. I remember being in my 20s and being like, why can't I make more? And it's like, because you're not supposed to, because you don't know what you're doing yet, right? And so it's just a lot of that. And I think like when we're talking about the YouTube, which is a super fun business, I think being a creator keeps me young. Like, and I you know, I think because it keeps me plugged into what's happening in the world and how people are doing things and why, and get to have really cool conversations with people from every walk of life, from every age, and it's just a fun place to be. And I will always try and keep myself plugged into it. And so when we're talking about like the business part of it, it's like just have fun, figure it out, get experience, and use that time to figure out what you like to do, so then you can go do it later. And it's okay to change your mind. It's okay. In fact, you need to fail in order to be successful. Like I know I'm in my YouTube failure era. You know this. You've seen my analytics, and so I'm just trying to figure it out, rebuild, go figure out what to do next. And it's all growth and mistakes and learning. And I think it's just a big part of the creator journey for sure.
I agree.
And I think that YouTube and all the platforms will keep us failing because they keep changing stuff and they keep moving the bar.
Yeah, tough business in that way. When you're trying to make it a business, that is for sure.
Absolutely. All right, Matt, what are you working on? What can we do to learn from the master?
Yeah, so I started Creator Dynamics, which is a consulting firm, and now turning into somewhat of a YouTube agency, which I never intended, but that's the way the winds are taking me. I also, when I started Creator Dynamics, I thought I was going to be, you know, working with my buddies in the YouTube guru space, like Sean Cannell and Ed Lawrence, Creator Booth, and all those guys. Roberto Blake, et cetera, I thought I was going to have to like launch new YouTube courses and talk to the people about growing like a homegrown YouTube channel. What ended up happening though is that people in my network from YouTube and Google started asking me if I could help them at the companies where they are now and the organizations. So that was a bit of a relief because it meant I didn't have to compete with Jay Klaus and all the others. Like they're so good and so they're so amazing at getting content out. I kind of pivoted towards helping companies and organizations, teaching them YouTube tactics and creator tactics, basically. And then ironically, what has happened is with that type of branding, what has happened is a lot of creator-led businesses or creator-led companies have come back around to me and are clients of ours now. And so, it's not just like companies and businesses, but actually creators who have built teams and big operations are starting to come our way because they need operational support. The creators are not really like operations people and people managers. And so they need some support in that way. And it's pretty cool because I spent 10 years inside the gears of YouTube and Google. And so I learned a lot about operations. And so I'm able to add that aspect to their businesses as well.
I think it is so necessary to have like an experienced person that can lead them through the different parts and stuff like that. So I know it's such a great place too because I've worked with you myself, and your knowledge is so immensely helpful. Do you have any closing advice for our creators about what they can do to build financially successful YouTube businesses?
Yeah, I would say the same as that when I started in the beginning of this conversation, which is try to build a business that is a business and try to think of YouTube as your marketing part of it. And if that means if you're a current YouTuber or even a TikToker and you need to sort of pause things to figure out what the business is going to be and what the product or service is going to be, pause for a bit, try to figure that out, then come back with your brilliant, charismatic personality and just blow up the business.
I love it. It's great advice and advice I have going on for myself. So thank you so much for your time, Matt. You can find the links to all the things places to connect with Matt, learn from him, and do more over at our show notes at thefundedyoutuber.com. Thank you again. Until next week, everybody, go make that money. Peace. The Funded YouTuber is brought to you by Gigastar, a parent company of Gigastar Market, an SEC-registered funding portal and member of FINRA. Learn more at gigastar.io. Neither Gigastar nor its affiliated companies provide legal, regulatory, financial, or tax advice. Any opinions expressed herein are those of the authors and are the informational purposes only. The information and opinions expressed herein are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investments, objectives, financial situation, or needs of any specific investors.